to his Rebbe, at the cost of hurting himself, he showed such kavod haTorah, the halacha is like him. It has nothing to do with scholarship. He must have been very smart, but Abaye was also very smart. It had to do with the personality, the person. He had a certain siyata d'shmaya. He was a certain, Moshe Meir Weiss brings this down. He had a certain siyata d'shmaya. Why? Because he had respect. They bring down a story from the Minchas Elazar, the Mukash Garov, that he was once walking by a store, a restaurant, and he saw someone in the restaurant eating pork. And he goes to the guy and he says, a Jew is not allowed to eat pork. So the guy looks up and he says, Rabbi, I'm not Jewish. He says, you're Jewish and you're not allowed to eat pork. He says, Rabbi, I'm not Jewish. He says, you're Jewish, you're not allowed to eat pork. Finally, after a few days, he says, okay, you're right, I am Jewish. But how did you know? How did you know? He says, because when a Jew eats an apple in the olden days, they just didn't take a bite of the apple. They took a knife, and they cut the apple, and they cut it in slices, and they ate slices. He says, you're taught how to eat by your mother. Your mother teaches you manners. And I saw the way you were holding the knife and fork and cutting, and I looked around, everybody was eating it like with their hands. You were using a knife and a fork. Only your mother could have taught you that, and only a Jewish mother. So I knew right away you were Jewish. That's what the Mukash. And he was so shocked by this that he came the next day and he said he was sorry, and he was makar of him, and the guy became a religious Jew. He says, there's so much of a person, there's so much of a person that we learn, that we have to understand that, the rabbis see things that we don't see. These are all things that are part of what it means to be Jewish. Okay. There was a story, I'll end up with one last story, then it's already 9:30 and I have to go. I said this Shavuos night, my brother-in-law had said this as well. In our community, before Purim, a week before Purim, there was a big snowstorm. I don't know if you remember. Purim wasn't so bad. There was a big snowstorm a week before, and they didn't collect garbage for a whole week. They didn't collect garbage. At 2 o'clock in the morning, the garbage trucks finally came down the street. So in our community, we have a yeshiva, Shar HaTorah. The head of the yeshiva is Rav Kalman Epstein. And I guess he was up late learning, and he heard the garbage truck coming down the street. And his garbage was filled, so he runs out and he schleps the garbage to the garbage truck. The garbage collector, his name was Gus, says, are you a rabbi? He says, yeah, I'm a rabbi. He says, I got a problem. I'm Jewish, and my mother died today. So I'm sorry to hear that. And my family said when she was sick that when she died they were going to cremate her. And I don't want her to be cremated. I want her to be buried. How can I arrange that she should be buried, not cremated? So he says, well, listen, why don't you do this? Why don't you arrange with the funeral home all the arrangements, and then call up your brother and your sister and tell them, Mom died, the funeral is at 1 o'clock. Once all the arrangements are made, chances are they won't do anything. He says, that's a great idea. And that's exactly what he did. At 11 o'clock in the morning, he says, Rabbi, calls him up, Rabbi, I did your advice, and the funeral was set for 1 o'clock, and my brother and sister made no problems, and we're going to have a regular kosher funeral. Thank you very much. By the way, could you speak at the funeral? And he doesn't know this guy at all. The guy's a garbage collector. He doesn't know the guy at all. And Rabbi Epstein says, no problem. And he goes and he finds out that the woman was a traditional woman who kept Shabbat a little bit and lit candles every once in a while. And he said, she wanted to have a traditional funeral, and it's such a wonderful thing that she has a traditional funeral. 2 weeks later, the garbage trucks are coming down the street again. So Rabbi Epstein goes out to see how Gus is doing. And of course he goes out there and there's no Gus. So he says, a few weeks ago there was this garbage collector, Gus. He says, yeah, Gus, this is not his route. He never comes to Queens. He's in Suffolk County. He said, but 2 weeks ago he was here. Yeah, we were short-handed because of the snow, and everybody was on snow removal. We needed to bring in some overtime, so that was the one time. He's never been in Queens before in his life. That's the one time he did Queens. The day that his mother died.
Hashem sent him to speak with Rabbi.
Could you believe it?
Oh my goodness.
It's interesting how things just work it out. Rabbi Epstein told over this story. It's a shocking story. It's an amazing story. There's a balance in the world, and you just have to live your life in order to find that balance. Have a good night, everybody. That was something we spoke about Shavuos night. Mishkalach Hasi.